Morning, everybody. This is Robert Phoenix. Let me fix my microphone here. That's so much better. So much better. You can hear my dulcet tones. Buenos dias. How is everyone? If you are starting your day, I hope you are getting off on the right side of the bed, the good side of the foot, the sunny side of the street. And if you're somewhere in the midst of your day, whether it's the evening or deep evening, I hope it was a good one. And I still haven't figured out how to. I probably have to do two of these per day for people in other parts of the world. So in Europe, what are you? You're 6 hours away. So it'd be 11, 3 o'clock in Europe. So you still have some daytime hours left. And maybe you could catch the updraft from today's show and some of the deep and penetrating insights that I will share with you for today's weather. Not a whole lot different than yesterday. I think a lot of people feel like that is the lot of their life at times. Not a whole lot different than yesterday. But of course, no 2 days are the same. And it behooves us to understand what the hell is going on here. So we have the moon at 21 Gemini, which again gives us a lot of activity. I mean, Gemini is a very active sign, and the moon in Gemini is quite curious. And I think this is a day where, even though Mercury is separating here, in the early morning hours, in the latter part of the day, in other parts of the world, there is the potential for gossip. And don't overshare. That is my advice today. Do not overshare. Why am I saying that? Well, we still have the tail end of the Mercury moon square, and then we also have the Sun moon square as well. But we also bring Neptune in, and Neptune leaks. When we have this square to the moon, Neptune leaks. So we have communication, emotions. The moon in Gemini is very chatty. It's very, very chatty. And then the square to Neptune. So watch out for the overshare today, or tonight for that matter, if you're listening in another time zone. Because what you say and possibly do can or may and will be used against you. This is one of those days, and it's all very mutable. Things happen very quickly, very, very quickly. So watch out for a couple of factors here. Escalation. Number two, people that ask lots of questions. People that ask lots of questions. If you're not comfortable with answering the question, just politely decline to answer the question, or say, I don't have enough information, or I don't have an opinion on that, and then see what happens. Today's a fishing expedition. People are fishing. They're fishing for information. They're fishing for a way to kind of worm their way in and either get you on their side so that you are supporting their position, or getting information that they may be able to use. This may not even be intentional, because when you get into the moon, you get into sort of more of these psychological forces. And the moon in Gemini it's a little schizo. This is no demerit for anyone that has a moon in Gemini, by the way, but it kind of is. So you may be dealing with somebody today who seems and appears to be very straightforward and very upfront. If you're good at communicating and you have a sense of discernment, you'll ask them questions, and or you'll just say, hey, look, I'm not qualified to answer that, or get back to me on that in a few days. Remember, it's a Mercury retrograde, and yesterday was such a Mercury retrograde. When I was doing Giuseppe's show, I got my times all mixed up yesterday. It's like I thought it was supposed to be on at 6. I was supposed to be on at 5. And then I had personal commitments that were involved. So then we ran into bad cell signals. It was not a fun. So kudos to Giuseppe for having some patience with yesterday's show. But this is what happens with Mercury retrograde. Sometimes you have to grin and bear it, and other times you have to double check, triple check, and make sure that you have the right time for whatever it is that you're doing, which is on me, right? But that's another function of Mercury retrograde, the things that kind of go off the rails, and they do. They do. But this last night, today is fact-finding mission. And do not leak out things that you are not prepared to have other people know about, right? Discernment. That said, there is ample opportunity here. Go back and look at projects that you have not finished or have not completed, right? Same thing, incomplete, not finished, because we have both Uranus and Jupiter retrograde, and we have the sun coming right in here, almost in an exact trine, and then Mercury, which is also retrograde. So there's value in things that you've left behind. Figure them out. Go find them. Dust them off. This is a good Mercury retrograde to finish projects. If you've started something and you need to go back and get into the dirty details, roll up your sleeves, get it done. It's not always easy. I've got a website to fix today, so I have to follow my own instructions, which is part of the deal, right? I'd also take a look at where your money is. I think we're headed into some real choppy waters here. There was a period when I was on, well, I'm still on Twitter, but it was probably about 6 months ago, I think. I've completely lost track of most time, obviously. Not in a bad way. Not in the senile or Parkinson's kind of way. Just in the sense that time seems to be kind of collapsing in on itself. But it must have been about 5-6 months ago. And I brought up that Saturn in Pisces was going to be about a war on gas and petroleum, and that they were going to do everything in their power to eliminate and eradicate gas. And people scoffed at me. Well, the Biden administration just canceled, I think, 131 oil leases in Alaska. Here's your Saturn in Pisces right here. This is exactly what we're talking about. And this is going to be problematic for people, right? This is, again, rolling things back. We even had a word that Russia was working with Saudi Arabia to throttle their production. This is when you see stuff like that, or when I see stuff like that on a global scale, to me the fix is in. It feels like they're all playing both sides. I mean, clearly during the Cold War, there was this pantomime going on between the East and the West, which didn't really exist. And I feel like to a large extent, we're still in that pantomime. That's a little geopolitics here for you today. But that Saturn retrograde in Pisces is clearly indicative of making it harder and harder and harder to tap into things like gas and petroleum. And it's one of the byproducts of Trump not being reelected. I mean, this country was energy efficient. You say what you want about Trump. There are some, I would say, fairly negative things, but there are also some fairly positive things that Trump did. And he actually did more for the country in terms of energy independence than any other president, I think, probably since maybe, I don't know, Reagan. I think gas prices finally fell after Reagan got in office because Jimmy Carter was throttling everything. So this is a very real issue with this Saturn retrograde, and by degree, it is in square with Uranus. Reminds me of this guy who was trying to cross the Atlantic on his pontoon hamster wheel. I'm going to talk about him on 15 Minutes of Flame today. But that's what this is like. It's like, you know, somebody wants to be original, creative, and who cares, right? He's not hurting anybody else. If somehow he doesn't make it across the Atlantic on his pontoon hamster wheel, that's the way it is. But he gets picked up by the Coast Guard. I think it's like his 5th time that he's tried to do this Saturn-Uranus square. And then Saturn Pisces is the ocean. So nope, you can't break free. You're in the Truman Show. Come back. Mars is still hanging in there with that trine with Pluto, but it should separate any day now. What did I say? Friday? So I'm on record, Friday. We do have the sextile with Venus. That's still happening. And that's a good sextile. Work closer together with other people. What's the saying? Many hands make for less work, or something like that. I don't know the exact saying. It's a folkloric aphorism, which sets us up for our star of the day. The Venus Jupiter square. That's a really interesting square, and then Venus is going to take on more the characteristic of the square. To me, that's about generosity. Not all squares are bad. It's about generosity and opening up your heart and your pocketbook, but use some discernment, right? Use some discernment, especially today when we have this Moon Neptune square, right? Somebody calls you up and says, "Hello, I'm calling for the firefighters of Lahaina, and we're doing a relief drive for the firefighters of Lahaina." Watch out for things like that. It wouldn't be that obvious, but you know what I'm saying. Okay. Just to go over the highlight of the day, don't get into idle gossip or chatter. Don't do it. I think it could have, even if you want to unload and if you're going to do it, just make sure the person you're doing it with is completely trustworthy, and it won't go anywhere between you and that person. But I would even wait a little bit. Once the moon moves into Cancer, which it will later tonight, early tomorrow, I think we're looking at early degrees of Cancer. The communication is much more empathic and much more grounded in shared values, which is really what Cancer is. So just hold off a little bit. Wait 24 hours before you have to unload on somebody, or somebody has a discussion that they want to bring up, and that you can safely engage in and participate in that conversation. Okay, let's talk about our star of the day. Today's star of the day is really interesting. Today's star of the day is none other than Grandma Moses. Grandma Moses. There she is. Now, we could have gone Buddy Holly. We could have gone J.P. Morgan, but we didn't. I think Grandma Moses is actually really interesting. This is a woman who starts seriously painting at the age of 72 and basically paints for about 25 years, dies at 102, and her artwork sells for big dollars. Where in her chart does it illustrate, pun not really intended, but where in her chart does it illustrate her longevity and the taking up of a significant career later in life? Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we can find it right here with Capricorn rising and Mars on her ascendant, 2023, 22. And then there's the sun at 18 Virgo coming right in. Sun trine Mars, Sun trine the ascendant. Capricorn always brings the goods later in life. So not that she didn't have useful activity. She was the wife of a farmer, as you might imagine. And at the age of 72, her career takes off. And the reason it took off is because she was a person that did needlepoint. That was her medium. And she got arthritis. She couldn't do the needlepoint. So instead, she started to get out brushes. And she didn't originally paint on. She painted on like wood panels and stuff that were laying around the barn farm, and she started to use just kind of house and barn paints. Like they weren't even like acrylics or water. They weren't specifically created for painting. Her style of painting, they're created for painting houses. And she had a little exhibition, I think, at a local art exhibit, and somebody saw her art, and they were like blown away, right? And a year later, she's got an exhibit in it's not the Museum of Modern Art in New York. It could have been the Guggenheim in New York. We'll find out when we go into the bio, because it's really interesting. But to me, it's Capricorn. And one of the things that I talk about with Capricorn is that it yields the goods later in life. So the clock went off on grandma here, and she has tremendous longevity. She's got that Sun Pluto trine, she's got that Sun Mars trine. She dies at 102. Her style is considered primitive. And I think that's a function of Mars in a lot of ways. We think Mars is very primal. And in Capricorn, it's again, look at her medium that she was working on, like barn panels. Wasn't even canvases. It's about as primitive as you can get. And yet, the transmission of day-to-day activities around the farm in various seasons was unlike anything else anybody was doing. And it had this very interesting combination of folk spirit, and it looks a little modern at the same time. And I don't think Grandma Moses was going for a postmodern effect in her painting. It was just a byproduct of how she painted. But when we look at the star of the day, which we try to find things that jump out and really illustrate a person's life in a chart. And I think she's a good one. And it's all connected to Capricorn here, right? And then she has this intercepted house in the first house with the true node and Chiron, right? So so let me give you a visual. Now, there's more going on here, obviously. The other thing with Grandma Moses is this Moon Uranus conjunction. Again, that's very youthful. Gemini is a very youthful sign. And she has Uranus in her fifth house, which again, with creativity, Uranus kind of breaks the mold on things. It's like, oh, look at this. This is different. This is unique. And I think for a long time, probably Grandma Moses may have wanted to kind of break out of a mold, but because she was a Virgo and dutiful, and she had these commitments with the farm, she did, Virgo farm mom, farm wife things. And then finally she kind of breaks through and becomes this celebrity, really. She was a contemporary of Norman Rockwell's. True node in Aquarius, Chiron in Aquarius, and an intercepted house here, which is interesting because she is going to be unique, right? Like there's nobody else that really did her stuff before her or after her. And I would assume also with Chiron here, that it would be difficult for her to fit in. And she did fit in, obviously. She didn't get a divorce or, run off and leave the farm. But I guess the moral of the story here is that if you hang in there long enough, there's a good chance they'll call your number. And this is what happened with Grandma Moses. I really like Neptune here in the second house and the trine with Venus. And Venus and Leo, very creative. This is an out of sign trine, right? Very creative. Neptune being watercolors, the second house being landscapes. And then we have this Venus South Node conjunction. And again, it feels to me very much like bringing something in from the past, which is creative and artistic. And I think she has a lot of creative energy and potential in her chart. The Jupiter sextile to the moon, the Jupiter sextile to Uranus. She's going to be different, and her art is quite different. And big seventh house, so lots of commitment in relationship. But what a fascinating life. Let's take a quick look at her art. Just if you haven't seen her art, it's really worth looking at. And to this day, her paintings sell for a huge amount of money. 1938, she was showing her paintings in the local drugstore. The following year, 3 were selected for inclusion in So it was MoMA, a Contemporary Unknown Painters, a show in New York's Museum of Modern Art. This was followed by a solo show at a New York gallery. Her paintings are now noted works of art and sell for large amounts of money. She died at 101 on 12/13/1961 in Hoosick Falls, New York. Very interesting lady. Let's take a quick look at her art. You can really see the modern primitive effect in her art. Let me get back here. Here's a just a Google sample of her art. It's like really simple, but like incredibly vibrant, and it's fascinating stuff. It's kind of like Rockwell, postmodern, with hints of impressionism. Like this is very impressionistic in its style, and she does like, and things aren't always. Sometimes aren't always to scale in her paintings, but they're so varied and eclectic. This has almost a Japanese feel to it. It's almost like Zen. And she's really fascinating. I like her snow stuff as well. Her snow paintings a lot of them wind up on Christmas cards, and especially the snow paintings. But this is one of my favorites right here. I love this. It's kind of psychedelic. Wonder if Grandma Moses ate a little wild mushroom. Look at these guys. They're basically running a line to the house, and was that the septic tank or something? We're draining that thing. Fascinating. Really interesting person. And there she is, old Grandma Moses, at work with one of her distinct watercolors. Here's a wedding scene depicted in her art. Yeah, I don't think everything is always to scale, but it doesn't really matter. Right? What matters is sort of the vibrancy, the fluidity. Here's a nighttime one. That's interesting too. She was prolific. Not only was she unique, but she was incredibly prolific when it came to her art. That's also, I think, a byproduct of Mars on the ascendant, right? The activity and the focus in a lot of ways. So a great American. This is a truly great American and a treasure who's a part of our story, and somebody who's not really talked about very much in terms of art. You get a lot of the postmodern stuff, Rothko and Jackson Pollock, but Grandma Moses, don't sleep on Grandma Moses. We had calendars or artwork. Yeah, I mean, the downside with Grandma Moses's work is that it's Hallmark. It's not that it's Hallmark quality, But Hallmark and companies like that realized that it had such a broad appeal that they could license the prints. She probably did incredibly well financially, right? It's that kind of perfect uh, delta between mainstream and kind of this unique vision that very singular in a lot of ways. Okay, there we go. She tried mushrooms at 72. Could be. Could be. Maybe she found a little cow patty out there. So what's this? Okay. All right. I'm out here for today. Thanks for being here. I think we're probably going to be on Rumble. Peter Bayonne, Giuseppe's channel. Maybe Tom, if you could put that in the chat for Peter, that'd be great. It was kind of a crazy show. I felt bad, and at one point, because I'm traveling, right, and I'm on the show in StreamYard, and at one point, I got the directive: pull over and park, and just grab the signal. I did it. The signal was shittier when I parked. Anyway, thanks for being here. You know the drill with True Hemp Science. It's the sponsor of the show. It's the only sponsor we have, and it's some of the best CBD products that I've run across. And the reason why, it's because of Chris's expert manipulation of CBD, which is the hemp product, which has been essentially distilled, right? And things like terpenes, which are incredibly useful. There's a catalyst effect with terpenes and CBD that really help with things like inflammation and pain. So that's why I promote his product, his ability to be this mad scientist, to tweak things the way that he needs them and the way that you need them. So if you go to truehempscience.com and you spend $100 or more, type in 15MINS, and you will get free product with your order. $150 or more will bring you free shipping. And what else? Anything else? Oh, 30-day money back guarantee. All right, join us over on Rumble today for 15 minutes. I still have to get into tweaking my website a bit before we jump back in there. All right, thanks. Take good care. Bye for now. Have a blessed day. It's Robert Phoenix. This has been the Astro Weather.